How's it going, guys? This is Luke from Coffee House, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about the Fellow Ode Generation 2. The Fellow Ode Generation 2, in its uniformity looks extremely similar to the Gen 1, but there are a couple key differences, and today what I wanted to do is just use this video to help you guys kind of understand, the drawbacks, the positives, everything about this, and kind of like, the big changes. So what we've done is we've segmented this into kind of a list of 5 things that they've changed. And I'm gonna go through them, give my feedback, and go through kind of like what I would envision to be like least important to most important. And so let's get started. So starting off with number 5 here, what we have is an increased hopper. So this is about 20% larger than the other hopper. You can see also on the inside of this, they've also adjusted some of the metrics here, because they've also adjusted some other things which we'll talk about as we get down the list. But it is nice having a larger hopper. The hopper I always thought was pretty extensively small, and by upping it up 20%, I think it's really valuable. What I would have loved to see, maybe something for the Gen 3, is a removable hopper. And obviously this is removable, there's screws, but kind of like the Melkonig grinders, you can unscrew it, swap it out, and Melkonig makes a variety of different sizes of hoppers for your application. Whether you're batch grinding for cold brew or something like that, it would be nice to be able to have the option to hot swap these with smaller or larger ones depending on what you're looking for. Coming in at number 4, we have an increased size of the vessel that you actually grind into, which is actually really nice. I like the idea that they increased this. I always thought it was a little small, and I think it tends to go hand in hand with the size of the hopper increase. I think it just makes sense. If this hopper was as big as it is now and the original container was there, we'd probably have some problems with that. They've still kept the pouring fins here, which I've always liked. I've never really minded it. And that's really about it. The lid seems a little easier to kind of put in there. Last time with the Gen 1, you kind of had to really get that edge in there and stuff like that. And from a long-term perspective, I'm hoping that this magnet stays on better than the last one, because we had a lot of issues with these magnets kind of popping off. So like the actual magnetic base here, you wouldn't be able to use it. At number 3, we have a reduced static buildup on this grinder. So what they've actually done this time is they've built a system inside of the grinder which prevents static from building up, and it actually does work pretty well. We've been thankful enough to have Fellow hear this feedback, because I think that was, at least for me, the number 1 complaint was the static buildup, the mess. You would go ahead, take this off, hit the little knock chute, and you would be met with 2 ounces of coffee down there, just coffee and chaff, and all of that buildup that was caught up inside of there. And so what they've done with this one is they've fixed it. It's a lot better than what it is, but still, as I've explained time and time again, is using WDT on something like this is really important. Just a little spray of water goes a long way to reduce static buildup. So whether you have the Gen 2 or the Gen 1, I always recommend doing that. Number 2 on the list is the Burrs. So the Gen 2 Burrs are different than the Gen 1 Burrs, which is awesome. I think a huge, huge complaint for a lot of people was that they would be grinding for, pour overs, literally at 1 or 2. And I have a Gen 1 at home, I'm still at 1.5 to 2, which is kind of crazy. You have so much room to play, but how usable is the rest of that? What is the application aside from fine tuning your cold brew or something like that? With the Gen 2 Burrs, they've completely changed it. You're actually able to get fine enough coffee now there. And so now you're, up in kind of the 4s and 5s for for making pour overs, which is really nice. I still don't know why they didn't bump it way finer. You should be, in my opinion, doing a 7-8 for pour over, and using kind of reducing the grind size for alternative applications and not espresso, obviously. On top of the Fellow box, I have it over there. It says, from pour over to cold brew, which, they explicitly are trying to state that this is not for applications outside of pour over and higher than that. I understand that they don't want this to be an espresso grinder, and by no means am I advocating for this to be an espresso grinder, but there are many, many alternative brewing methods that involve grinding finer than a pour over, but not as fine as espresso. And I think to be able to touch on that would be something that's a little valuable here. However, they've improved it really well, and I'm happy about that. And last but not least, this is the most important thing ever for me, is that when you hit this button right here, you are not met with a beep anymore. I think that was my real, number one gripe with the grinder here, was the beeping of the on-off button. So now, when you go ahead and kick this on, it's going to start quietly, and it's going to auto-stop quietly. So by no means do you have to worry about that annoying loud beep every morning. All right, everybody. So I hope that this gave you a good kind of introduction, a little bit of an understanding about the Fellow Ode Gen 2. I think it's a really nice improvement, and if you have the Gen 1, I don't know if it's really worth jumping up to the Gen 2, to be honest with you. But if you are a new Fellow Ode buyer, definitely go for this over the other one. You can see that they're clearly kind of like phasing out the old one. They've offered a number of sales on that one as well. And for those who are really keen on kind of like getting that nicer burr set, they do sell the Gen 2 burrs as well, which is nice. However, I think the best course of action, if you really wanted to do this, is hop on Marketplace or something like that and sell your Gen 1 and see what you can get and apply it to a Gen 2. At the end of the day, there are many good grinders out there, but I've found that in this $300 price point, there's really nothing that kind of comes close. I've had problems with grinders way more expensive than this, and this one's proven reliable for the last year or so that I've used it every single day. So yeah, I think that's everything. If you guys have any questions about these, we're gonna have them in our store online, so feel free to go check out there. Shoot us a message if you have any questions. We're here to make that happen. And yeah, that's everything. Thank you again for tuning in. I'm Luke from Coffee House, and we'll see you next time.